All right. Welcome to the Sound Off, Nikita Gupta. It is such a pleasure to have you here with us today. From our partners at Verkada, you are here to really bring some important elements of the school safety conversation to the table. We're going to get a lot more into your background as we roll through this conversation. I want to give you a chance to set the table and dive in a place that maybe reframes this for us in a way we haven't thought about before. So, how should we be thinking about safety, security, technology today in schools?
So, when you think of a traditional SOC, a security operations center, AI can now fill that role for you. Instead of having a person watching constantly, AI will tell you exactly what you should be looking at when and really identifies the anomalies or things that are out of place, probably potentially even better than a human. And it allows you to save that time, but then also cover way more area than you could with a team or an individual person monitoring from a screen. So
I love it. So we're getting people out of the basement. They get to be out there relationshiping, and adding another whole layer of safety and security to this approach or this system, through their own eyes. And then when they need it, they can consult the information. It's in the palm of their hand. And I love your point about utilizing AI in this fashion, right? We as humans are just not all that great at sitting in front of screens for very long and being effective and being focused, right? And so the reality of us having the money in a school to park somebody in front of monitors to, watch all day and monitor all day is, yeah, that's pretty slim. And then on top of it, their ability to do that effectively is not going to be great. So let's let AI do that so that we can do the stuff that we're good at out and about with our students and staff. That for sure is a flip of the script. Let's just make sure everybody knows what we're talking about when we talk about mobile alerts. And then maybe from there, let's dive in a little bit to the AI applications because, wow, AI,
yeah,
I feel like AI means a lot of different things to a lot of different people right now. So let's start with the mobile alerts. Give us a little vocab lesson here.
So, mobile alerts are one of the notification delivery methods that you can get for various things happening at your schools. So, if you think about like a student vaping, or if you think about someone tampering with a camera, or if you think about something like there's a license plate of interest, maybe it's a parent who shouldn't be picking up their kid and is in the system, and we know what to go talk to them or deal with the situation right when they step on campus. There's all different sorts of things you can set up as events of interest in the system. And so mobile notifications or mobile alerts are essentially how you get either a push notification directly into a mobile app, which you can click on and get the instant context, or a SMS, the same way you receive one from your friends or family, so that you have all the information that you need to deal with a certain situation and typically prevent it before it progresses. So I think mobile alerts to me are the fastest way for you to, anytime there is an anomaly, deal with it or send the right people to deal with it right from your phone.
Okay, so great application for the school setting, right? We're trying to move away from just like the PA, right? And sometimes some of those alerts, we maybe don't want to give broadly to the entire community, right? So, to be able to target communication and give alerts, where they are relevant. You brought up a great example of like the pickup line, right? And so if we have integrated systems like you're talking about, that identify an issue or an anomaly, and we want to be proactive and put out that alert, it doesn't necessarily need to go to the whole school, like over the PA system, right? We've got this capacity to be a little bit more direct and targeted with that information. Okay, so that makes sense. Let's talk a little bit then about AI and its application to safety in the school environment. Why is that such an important part of this conversation?
Yeah, it is so crucial because AI is the technology that allows us to take the vast amounts of data that your devices around campus are generating and turn it into more actionable intelligence. So, what that means is that instead of having to go investigate after the fact reactively, as I mentioned, you can now have an even broader set of detections. And so when it comes to things like slip and fall, certain activities, maybe someone's graffitiing a certain part of the campus, the variety of things that you can set up to be alerted on is exponentially increased because of AI. So our models, we're constantly adding more and more things we're detecting. And so now instead of having to manage a really complex system and be like, oh, I care about X thing or I care about Y thing, we can tell you what the system does and make it really easy for you to know what should be of interest instead of having to manually find that like a needle in a haystack, right? So that's a very exciting application of AI. And it also makes it easier for to just simplify your workflows. When it comes to an intercom at the front door, you could make sure that there's a transcription, or you can actually see what exactly that person's saying into the intercom. So little gains in your workflows day to day is hugely beneficial through AI.
Yeah,
So
I think about just the cognitive load of safety constantly in an environment that really wasn't built around safety to begin with, where our primary objectives in schools are educating and socializing our youth so that they can be the amazing people that they're meant to be. And so we struggle in education spaces to figure out how we're going to do that job at the same time as doing all of these other jobs, right? And how are we going to communicate appropriately in real time in a protected manner, and also, by the way, how are we going to keep our eye on all the balls, right? And I think sort of think of like the security guard. A lot of people have this image of like, well, school safety means that we'll have this security person and they're like in some booth and they're manning all of these, camera feeds or whatever. And the reality is that's not really humanly possible. And
yeah,
as well as, like every license plate, for example, to go back to the example that you used before, or every nook and cranny of the school building. So how can we, you know, get our arms around that literally? And it looks like, you guys have developed ways where AI can feed that system, be those eyes, be those ears, and let us know when it's time to make that mobile alert, for example.
exactly. It is not really feasible. I know in the day to day, we want to make sure you're like on top of everything and make sure that you are, yeah, on top of everything. Everyone's in the right spot. You can't keep tabs on that every day. And so you should be able to trust that the system works well enough to know when to care and to get that alert and know how to deal with it instead of focusing on understanding the system. You focus on the response and your reaction in the moment then.
Mhm, mhm. I mean, I think too about one of the most important things that we talk about in school safety is our ability to have relationships, right? Particularly, most importantly, with our students. And I think of capabilities like this as offering us more time and space for that, which of course serves our end goal of safety anyway, right? We want to have those relationships. We want to be able to notice when a student is maybe not operating at baseline, something's different, something's off. We still have to attend to all of those pieces. But in
Yeah,
terms of some of the other kind of anomalous or concerning situations that may be coming our way, this can provide us perhaps that capability to do so. Okay, so you have set the table really well for us. We're going to deviate for just a little bit here. This is a little bit of a roasting that we do to all of our guests, and you've been warned. So we'd love to get to know you a little bit as we have this conversation and explore all of these aspects of school safety together. But love to get to know you on a little bit of a personal level. So step outside of your role in technology here, and your expertise, and tell us about your superpower. And I promise it'll be relevant to our conversation and the work that we're all going to talk about here today. So, what is that thing? Something unique or interesting about you um,
Mhm.
that you find is maybe you thought once upon a time it was useless, but it is actually something that that you have to bring to bear as part of this larger team that we have in school safety. What's your superpower?
That is a great question. I think my superpower is definitely my background and what I studied these last few years. I am a super nerd when it comes to learning about the brain and the way people think. So, my background is actually in computer science and cognitive science. And cognitive science is a really interesting interdisciplinary field of study. We learn about philosophy, psychology, linguistics, computational cognition, which is like really how a lot of these AI models are based on actual operating in the brain. And so I think my superpower that has affected me in the day to day at work, outside of work, when we think about school safety, is using this understanding of the brain and how people think and how certain technologies work to really understand different people's perspectives. So any conversation I'm in, I love to understand where are people coming from, what concerns what may they have that are impacting the way they think, and really use that to build, right? Whether I'm building products at Verkada, whether I'm building relationships or communities, knowing where people are coming from and having this relationship built with them really helps you have the most impact you can and really helps you build the coolest things, honestly. There's so many different types of people who have such a crucial role in making sure that areas and people are safe that it really is so valuable to build those relationships, right? Everyone is a piece of this puzzle when it comes to making sure you feel safe when you walk into a building or you walk into a school. And so this is where understanding the different ways people think, people's different levels of competency with technology, people's level of comfort with technology. And so I think it really benefits when there's people thinking about all of those different types of individuals, not just thinking of it as a system, but the users that are going to be using that system, right? So
Brilliant. So thanks for taking that little sidebar with us. But as we think about these technologies and tools and look at the current landscape being school safety, what are some of the biggest gaps that you're seeing in terms of like what's possible, and what's actually present in school safety technology today?
you mentioned we all are talking about the right things, right? We're talking about how technology can make us better, how we have to be more proactive than reactive and really have a system that works. But I think the biggest gap right now is there are systems that work, they're just not talking to each other. So within this school, you will see different products by different companies, different vendors, different people using each of them who aren't really transforming it into a comprehensive and kind of complete system that is very intelligent. So when it comes to like current setups, there are people who are like, yes, we are a safe school, we have the system set up. But really, if it takes a lot of work to understand them, and your cameras and your access control are not talking, or your access control and your intercoms and all of these things are not talking to each other, it becomes very hard to get this holistic view. And when it comes to safety, we don't know what will be the thing that you need to react to, right? It's like we can't know which of those systems will be the one detecting it. We care about the workflows that exist in the schools should be covered by this holistic system so that the right person knows how to respond, when to respond, and is focused on like reaction and their role there instead of focusing on like, hey, how do I use this system? Because I'm used to using this other one, or IT didn't train me, or it's just too hard in terms of the whole workflow. So
Such a good point about integrating systems. That is another conversation that comes up every single school site or district that we visit. Good or bad, people are stepping up and realizing that technology can really help them advance their initiatives, their efforts, lighten the
mhm.
load in so many ways. But it almost looks piecemeal. I don't, and I hate to say it. It does. It's not even almost. In a lot of schools and districts, it's very piecemeal. It's like, oh, we heard of this, our colleagues in the district next door are using this system. This is great. We need to invest in this. This is going to help us, and it does. Um,
Yeah.
but it ends up working in its own little silo. It's not connected to this other system. And I love this picture that you paint of almost like a network of systems that are properly integrated. So they're doing the work for us and
Yeah.
communicating more in a centralized way so that we have what we need at our fingertips, and we don't have to kind of switch gears. I think a lot of our school staff, it wasn't their day job or their training to be security minded necessarily, and so to
Yeah.
have to be like checking in all these different places for all these different things and have the ability to navigate a variety of systems is very challenging for sure.
Yeah. It should be just as easy to use the system, for someone who is in it every day or for the person who has to check it once when something happens or to stop something from happening, right? So the systems that are talking to each other should be designed for both those types of people. It's going back to the whole thinking about the end users, right? You can't assume that it will always be an expert, it'll always be an IT person, or the staff, school staff will be large enough to have a dedicated person for each of these roles, right?
That's
Oftentimes it's
gonna
not
be
the
a
case.
rarity. Yeah, that's gonna be
Different
a
people
rarity. Mhm.
responding, wearing different hats every time. So definitely important to consider.
Absolutely. So we talk a lot about prevention and proactive measures, and you've mentioned both of those words numerous times already in our conversation when it comes to campus safety. What are some of the best practices that schools can establish or follow as it relates to assessing risk? What are some of those best practices in terms of that proactive monitoring on campus and just understanding sort of our risk landscape, generally speaking?
I think our technology now allows us to not only have like alerts and technologies set up that help you, be proactive, it also gives you the results of all of these things that you've set up. When it comes to like our heat maps, when it comes to the list of alerts that were generated, when it comes to all of the permissions that you have set up for a certain door, we now convert those things to analytics and insights. Instead of just one off items that you look at, it is very crucial for schools to be reviewing those and having things like fire drills or other procedures you already have in place converted to a set of data or a set of like video or footage that you are reviewing later to identify all of the vulnerabilities, gaps, and basically points that you may not have covered. So for example, one of the schools I talked to, the fire drills that they have, there is actually dedicated few people who review in our system, like within Command, which is our software product, review basically to make sure that the whole parking lots, the whole campus, everything was covered and making sure that there weren't any permissions or doors or anything left out of sight.
Mhm.
So when it comes to risk assessment, it's really about like the day to day, making sure that you have test plans or have someone who is evaluating trends or the insights that our system is sharing to ensure that there is no room for any issues to happen or for any anomalies or for gaps basically in the system.
So I caught on the word trends really stuck out to me when you were talking about like, utilizing systems like this to understand the landscape, insights, trends, just to give us almost just like a 30,000 and granular view if we need to, but we need to have that kind of overall understanding of what's going on in all of these different areas. And so I think that's a very important way to be looking at this. That puts us in that proactive position instead of, "Oh, no, someone got hurt in,
Yeah.
the East Wing stairwell." And then we discover that there is a pattern of negative behaviors occurring in the building on a regular basis there. We don't wanna find that out after something negative has happened. We wanna be able to detect those trends and gain those insights ahead of time.
Yeah, and I have one really good example I want to share about this. One of the schools that I've talked to up in the Santa Barbara mountains, they are not as concerned about it's a bit of a remote area, so they're not as concerned about violence or these acts that will require immediate like lockdowns and response. Their biggest concern is actually wildfires. So when you think about something like air quality, and for them, they got used to monitoring sensor alerts and air quality alerts from their phone. And in general, because there was someone evaluating like trends and evaluating any potential things that could happen, they were able to avoid students coming to school. And that sometimes is a difference between, like an immediate evacuation because of a fire in the area, which we deal with a lot in
Yeah.
California, versus like, because I've built in this practice of checking beforehand or in the morning or from my phone when I wake up, it becomes easier for you to respond with clarity of mind and early, and not have to deal with something like an evacuation or like dealing with a fire at the school itself then. So something simple, not necessarily a violent situation, but definitely potential for it to cause a lot of harm that was avoided
Yeah.
because of this risk assessment that is constantly happening by that school.
That's amazing. So I love the example there because all of our schools, ideally, are taking this holistic approach to school safety, a comprehensive approach that is considering a variety of risks within their landscape. And as a part of that process, there will naturally be higher priorities. It will be more rare for there to be an act of violence. All of our schools are preparing for it because we just don't know. We can't, it doesn't discriminate, unfortunately. However, there are these day-to-day risks all the time that schools are managing. And I think, of course, what keeps a lot of us up at night is the risk of violence. It seems so overwhelming, I think, to many, and there's some psychology there around the fact that it's human made versus something like a wildfire, which is a natural disaster or phenomenon. And yet, knowing your threat landscape, knowing the risks that may be high priorities for you, and then creating your systems in a way that prioritize those and help you to make decisions. Like, look at that, making a decision far in advance. We're just not even the conditions are such that it's going to be too risky. So we're calling off school today. We're just going to mitigate that risk entirely. And instead of risking having to evacuate students out of a very fast moving, dangerous situation, we won't have that situation today. Right.
Exactly.
Very
Exactly.
informed, very smart. So let's talk a little bit about those mobile capabilities, if you would indulge us a little bit here. So, ideally we've set our system, we know our priorities, and we know the types of things because we have been monitoring and viewing the insights and the trends. So w- what does that mobile capability piece look like? What are a few ways that schools can use that technology to improve safety overall and really cultivate trust in those everyday rhythms of the school day? We want school to be a place where we're so well set up for safety that we don't have to be constantly, hyper focused on it. That we know our systems, our procedures. We have educated everyone, prepared everyone, and we have what we need should a safety situation arise. So, how do we do that? How do we help our schools really tap into that mobile capability? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. And I am actually the product manager for the mobile app in general. So I
Very
think
neat.
this is what I think about day to day. And it is something that is so use case driven. Like, yes, we know that we have access to it, but what does it unlock and what power does it give people in this day and age? And so for me, I think obviously mentioned mobile alerts, detect the anomalies. And so it's not just about knowing the anomaly happened, it's making sure that after that point, you can surface the right information and connect the dots right from your phone, right? So when something happens, it's not going to be like, oh, I only got a little clip from the video and then I need to send someone there to go actually deal with it. you should be able to do the whole investigation from your phone. And I think that's truly the power of all the functionality we're bringing into the phone, where it's really great for the day-to-day monitoring. And like if you do feel more comfortable by checking in on things, you should be able to do that. But also when something happens and when you need to stop further things from happening, you can do all of that from your phone. We want it to be so that you can change permissions for a particular door. You can go check in with our guest product. You can check who's visiting and make sure that list is up to date. So every product's functionality that you could need while on the go is built directly into the app so that you can connect the dots and make sure that you're getting the full picture of this holistic system, if that makes sense. But one really cool thing that we've been expanding beyond the mobile phone when it comes to mobile capabilities and mobile deployments, we have actually started exploring what it means to expand like duty of care from beyond the campus to potentially school buses or transporting students as well too. This is where the intersection gets so cool because now you can actually understand when something happens instead of having to wait for like the bus to arrive or do it after the fact investigation or analysis. In real time, you can pull up footage from, say, a bus or a particular like trailer that may be near that area of like an area of concern and instantly deal with it then. So this notion of not just dealing with security like from a desk in a central like security
Right.
operations center type of environment to wherever you are, wherever your devices are, and really understanding how people are moving, how students are moving, and understanding that school safety is beyond just the constraints of the campus or a particular building on campus. That's really where I see the power of mobile.
So I just feel like that's such a game changer because, I mean, I know districts that have invested enormously, financially, and the resources of space also in a school are at a premium. So to take a very large space and donate that space, dedicate that space to monitors and computers and all of those things, I have seen that and it's very impressive. But wow, that then requires that all of our very security minded people are holed up, and as you kind of pointed to early in this conversation, just thinking about how people work and how the school environment exists and is so highly interactive, it's a very strange way to go about it, right? Ideally, we've got folks that are moving around the campus and I love that, have the capability right in their hands or in their back pocket, so they can be doing both things. They can be monitoring situations, gaining those insights, and also collecting some of that real time right in front of my eyes, behavioral information and kind of putting it all together. So I think that it's like you're flipping the script, I suppose, with this mobile capability. And for so many reasons, I think that just sounds so much more fitting to the dynamic environment that is a school community.
Exactly. It's like when you truly care, I think people on campus will want that who obviously have the permissions to do so, which is a huge thing we'll talk about later as well too. We want to make sure we're granting proper permissions so people have access to these applications or tools. Only the people who should do. But like it is something as simple as like as I mentioned, you woke up, you checked the app, and you saw that something was not right, and you took action right there, or like before you go to sleep, or just in general, like it's like not dictating how you should deal with security and kind of matching it to people's workflows that already exist,
Yeah.
which are so dynamic, so different, school to school, person to person. And that's what, you mentioned the pros and cons of mobile in general, but that's one thing that I really see people getting comfortable with and the power of your phone to integrate with these like key systems that keep you safe wherever you are.
Yeah,
So
kinda literally meeting people where they are is what's happening.
exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
One more thing I want to mention, which I've noticed at schools, variety of sizes, variety of geographies, just like a common thing from school to school or even state to state is level of comfort with technology as
Oh,
well
yeah,
too.
well, yeah,
When
absolutely.
it comes to things like like privacy, there's certain states that have actual like legal legislation prohibiting schools from using certain technologies where their individuals may want to, but they're legally not allowed to. And so we also build with all of that in mind. In terms of schools vary so much in level of comfort or what their rules are from state to state. And so when it comes to our privacy features, we make sure that those things are so configurable. You mentioned the word configurable, that you can set the right preferences. They're automatically off right from the start. So you can set them based on what your school is comfortable with or your admin's comfortable with. And then change it from there. And when people do change it, it's very clear why, who did it, and this kind of audit trail is there as well for when it comes to investigating like incorrect permissions or privacy filters not turned on when they should be, and all of that stuff. So we care about all of that heavily as well too, because people's level of comfort is so different.
So you touched on school, culture, community culture. We've talked about relationships, realities of leadership, and that can be quite a variable, from building to
Yeah.
building, district to district, and even communication styles. I would say of our leaders and our users. How are those actually shaping the success of these tools? Because as I listen to you, like I said, I hear that kind of curiosity mindset, and I would imagine that as innovators, you're looking at those and you're learning how people's brains work, systems work. How is that shaping the success of these tools?
The success of the tools is really proven by particular success stories, right? So we are highlighting success stories and really working with people who have achieved certain success that we want everyone to achieve. So when it comes to like the bus deployments, for example, that was started with a particular customer who had this need, and we kind of just kept expanding and building into this area. And we're like, this product, the camera can work with the gateway, and we like are connecting the dots here. And so it really comes down to when things work, communicating outwards and kind of being an advocate of the solution and working with us to like teach others what we're doing in this podcast as well
Yeah.
too. Like we're not just talking about like the issues and talking about again the walls. We're talking about what worked for us, how could it work for you, and so it really comes down to sharing more and more and having educational sessions within schools,
Whoa.
with between schools, between states, and just like it really comes down to the conversations. And so the success of the tools relies on those. Like we can build the coolest functionality into the product, but we do see a lot of value in people like using them, telling us what's working, what's not working, and what they would want. And so I think the exciting part for me is getting to hear from people in the day to day. Like we value the end user, the school's needs, and if something's not comfortable, tell us early, and then we can just adapt from there, right? And so it's really about making it more of a comfortable topic, a comfortable situation. And really, like, there's people in this space who are so passionate, like you, like me. And so it's like really highlighting the voices of those people and collaborating to extend that knowledge.
Well, that you speak my love language there. But I would say of our schools as well, like that again, kind of returning back to the place we started. This is how we think. This is how we work. This is what we're trying to achieve with our students is this kind of, creative problem solving mentality that only creates more opportunities for that collaboration and that kind of dynamic thinking that's the goal for us in the school environment all around. So it's why shouldn't it be for the grown-ups as well? We should be listening to everyone, including our students. So we have traveled around this topic. I think I could probably stay on with you quite a bit longer, but I would love for you, out of all the things that we talked about here, Give us kind of the one thing, Nikita, if there's one thing that folks can take away from this conversation and bring back to their work or their mindset, what is it that you would hope they would take back?
I think the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway from this conversation is to evaluate your systems and everything you have in place sooner and earlier in general so that you could become more proactive. Obviously, the system should work when something happens and the reaction piece and the response piece should be there, but really expand the possibility of what are the type of things we can detect. Are we checking things earlier? Or we do have a day-to-day kind of risk assessment? So really think about how the technology can work to make it better for you to be proactive than reactive. And one way to do that is with mobile alerts, right? So the right people have the right information at the right time. So valuable. Like there's so much power in this level of comfort that you can get from knowing that the right people have the right information at the right time.
Love it.
That's the biggest. Do what it takes to establish a system that makes you can say in full confidence that my system allows me to do that. So
Wow, full visibility, right? Full transparency and connection, right, to the situations. Well, that's a great takeaway. This has been a phenomenal conversation. Thank you so much, Nikita, for joining us today. I know we'll have to have you back so that we can dive a little bit deeper, but it's been such a pleasure. Thanks again, Nikita Gupta here on The Sound Off.
thanks so much, Michelle. I really enjoyed our conversation.